A carjacking in Seminole County. Man, it's like a new law and order right before our very eyes. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Donnie, I'm excited about today's show. It sounds really good.
Hey, man, I don't know. There's a lot of people talking about something that it's just, it's unreal. It's like a CSI and a Law and Order and the whole nine yards that took place right here where we live in Seminole County. And I'm excited about sharing that story and also to give folks a little update on what's happening with Chad Daybell, the grave digger in the grave digger's trial. So got a lot of exciting stuff to share today.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've been doing some little background reading as well on the case having to do with the carjacking, and it sounds like it was a well orchestrated and planned event that occurred. So I'm interested to hear more details on that. All right, well, let's just dig right in. We're ready to go here. We'll tell everybody about Charlie Crimebuster. If you need to get a hold of us or want to send information to us, please do so at charliecrimebuster.com and also at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. And as you can see, we have a supporting network, peacemakernetwork.com, where you can become a badge, BADGE member for as little as $3 a month. And you can also join our YouTube channel by being a subscriber at youtube.com at Charlie Crimebuster. So we have the Seminole County carjacking and killing.
This happened just recently here in our county. There was a young lady, we'll call her first name is Catherine. She was actually driving from Homestead, Florida, which is right near where I am right now. I'm out on the road here in South Florida, and not too far from where I am right now is where this young lady lived. And she took a journey all the way from Homestead all the way up to Seminole County, and she was headed to the place of Castleberry. They know that because of the GPS that they've now located and this sort of thing. And as she was coming through Seminole County in broad daylight, two guys carjacked her and took her out of her vehicle, or rather got in her vehicle and carjacked it, and took her all the way down to Osceola County, which is down near Kissimmee. And for those of you who are listening, that's near Disneyland and on the other side of Disneyland in the Kissimmee area in Osceola County. And there she was murdered, shot to death, and her car was burned and she was in it. And so what is so unique about this, so it's, this was in broad daylight, and it just happened to be that behind them was a vehicle that had a camera, webcam in their car, and it was all right there taken right before our very eyes. Even though they had a mask on and all that, you could see this guy get out of a vehicle and carjack her, and then took her and killed her. So this was a big mystery. Why in the world would somebody just driving through our county be carjacked?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now there's been a lot of investigation and some really, really, I think just outstanding work by our sheriff's department in Seminole County and the detectives and this sort of thing. They were able to even use some face recognition. And the great thing about living in Florida is that we've got a whole group of good sheriff departments here.
We do.
Today, while I was down, I met Sheriff Ivy from Brevard County. I call him Walking Tall of Florida. And what Seminole County was able to do, they were able to get with Pinellas County, and they were able to utilize a special software from Pinellas County of face recognition. And they were able, by looking at that, they were able to identify one of those two carjackers.
Wow.
And it's just really remarkable how they did that. Also, of course, they were able to find some things on Facebook where one of the suspects had actually made a post on Facebook with the very same clothes that he wore during the carjacking.
He would
And
qualify
so,
for the crazy crook, wouldn't he?
yeah, he would. He would certainly qualify for the crazy crook. So it came down to two suspects, one guy by the name of Jordan, and the other one they call Kibo. Well, they were able to locate Jordan pretty quickly, made an arrest there. They arrested him not for this carjacking at the very beginning, but for other warrants they had for him. And then the other guy by the name of Kibo, believe it or not, they've just recently arrested him in Puerto Rico. He already got to Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And federal marshals nabbed him, and now he's going to be extradited back, of course, to Seminole County. And both those gentlemen, I won't call them gentlemen, the thugs. Both these thugs, these murderers, are now under charges of federal kidnapping, carjacking that led to a murder. Now, there's a lot of jurisdictional things that they got to deal with here, James, because remember the carjacking took place in Seminole County, but the murder took place in Osceola County. You know, it's going to be some jurisdiction deal there. So in Seminole County, they're charged with federal kidnapping, federal carjacking, and kidnapping that led to murder. And I'm sure in Osceola County, there's going to be murder charges brought against these guys.
The fact that they were in separate counties, it still falls under the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, right? The FDLE.
Oh yes. The state does it. But what's going to happen now is, especially because he was one of them, Kibo, the guy they call Kibo, was actually caught over in Puerto Rico. We now have the feds involved in it, so it's going to be federal charges that are going to be given to them with their carjacking that led to murder. And of course, the feds then will take a lead in that investigation with the cooperation and assistance of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, the Osceola Sheriff's Office as well. And there may be actual real murder charges coming from Osceola. We don't know yet. So these guys, thankfully, have been caught. They're off the street. They're not going to hurt and harm anybody else. These are evil guys. We even believe now that they are actually related to the murder of a tow truck driver, a couple of days before that. These were dangerous thugs. So thank God we got them off the street, and I don't think they will ever harm anybody again, because they're going to go away for a long time, probably their entire lives, if not the death penalty.
Connect the dots for us on how the tow truck driver is associated with the crime.
Well, that's still a mystery right now.
Still being investigated.
The sheriff of Seminole County, he actually did a news conference just today, and he kind of got us caught up with a lot of that information. But he was pretty tight-lipped and said that's still under investigation, and there's a lot of other things to tie to this, because now we know that this lady who was killed, unfortunately, was coming from Homestead, Florida. She was actually going to a house in Castleberry up in in Seminole County, and this guy was a guy by the name of Giovanni, and Giovanni was the guy that she was going to see. And when they were first investigating this, her brother, a guy by the name of Lewis, actually told authorities that the last person that she talked to was Giovanni. Then they got a hold of her husband, and her husband basically said this. Now listen to this very carefully, because there's a real key word here. Said that she was coming from Homestead. First of all, he said she was coming up to see relatives, but there's no relatives in Seminole County. Then it came to be that she was going to Seminole County to see that Giovanni was the very last guy that she talked to. And she was coming up there to see a friend, to get this, to bring money and other stuff too. Now, James, what do you think about when you hear the words other stuff?
Probably some illegal contents of some nature.
Oh, yeah, drugs, no doubt about it. I mean, when I first saw this, before any of the investigation got going, and I realized that there was ties to a house in Seminole County that was actually raided, and when they raided that house, Giovanni's house, they found drugs, fentanyl, and a whole bunch of other stuff there, and a weapon. I mean, right off the bat, this has drugs and drugs all the way. What appears to be, I think that she was going to make a drug delivery and money delivery. And these two thugs found out about it, and they decided to interrupt her on the way to carjack her and take her out and kill her and steal the drugs and the money. I think that's what we're going to find out that exactly happened. Now, the question is, what about her husband? He sent her there. I believe there's a lot more to it than him just being her husband who said, "Oh, she went up there." I believe he might be the drug pen down at Homestead. Who knows?
Now, wasn't there also a law enforcement individual that was also arrested in connection with this?
Yeah, there was, and this is really interesting too. The officer that was arrested was an Orange County officer out of Orange County in Orlando, and he actually is really still a little bit sketchy of what his involvement was. We do know that he or either his wife was friends with Catherine's husband down at Homestead, and her husband simply called this deputy that was a friend of theirs, and said, "Would you please find out what you can? My wife is missing, or she was murdered, and I'd like to know about the case." Well, this deputy, rather than just saying, "Okay, I'll find out what I can and do it as any citizen can," he decided to call the authorities in Seminole County, and he masqueraded himself as a detective from Orange County. Well, he wasn't a detective from Orange County, he was a deputy sheriff.
Wow.
And then he went into, to the portal and began to investigate the case, find out what he could to give to her husband that information. And of course, all that was, he didn't have authority to go into those records, and he certainly didn't have authority to misrepresent himself. And now he's in a whole heap of trouble, because even though you're a police officer or a law enforcement officer, it looks like that this husband, either with the deputy's knowledge or not with the deputy's knowledge, certainly utilized this deputy to get information that should not have been given to him. It was a part of the investigation. So at the very least, you have hindering with investigation, and
Right.
And so this deputy, of course, was immediately fired, and he's facing charges as well. I don't know that anything has been proven that he was a part of this drug ring that we see that seems to be developing. I hope not. I hope that he was just trying to do a friend a favor and use very, very poor judgment in it. I hope that's the case, but we don't know. I mean, who knows? He may have been a part of the whole deal. That's just unknown at this point.
What really impressed me was the fact that they very quickly found that green Acura, it was a 2002, that there was only 3 in the state.
Yeah. They that she, the green Acura, that was, by the way, I will say that was tied to the murder of the tow truck driver who had, I guess, towed that at one time, and so they were able to relate it there. But something else fascinating. Not only were they able to find that vehicle and see who it registered to a relative, I think of of one of the guys, actually Jordan's relative, I believe. But they were also able to find through cameras, they were able to see another vehicle, which was a red Toyota. That red Toyota came into the picture because the guy there came out, and they could see that red Toyota picking up these guys as they were wiping down that green Acura before before they put the other vehicle to fire and all that. So then they found the red Toyota, and they were able to link it back, identify it to belonging to a relative of this guy by the name of Kibo, who they arrested in Puerto Rico. So here you're going to see, and I think this is really interesting to realize how law enforcement operates. Through 2 different vehicles, they were able to identify these suspects. And if you remember, we did a series on Brian Kohlberger in the college killings, and the way they found him was that white Elantra, that the country was working for. So the vehicles we're in, we're attached to those vehicles, and that's a very, very, very important tool that law enforcement can use to get them. Now, another thing, James, the reason why they really believe they got the goods on these guys, they were also now able to to follow their cell phones, and their cell phones was present during that carjacking at that very location.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, these guys are nabbed. Thank God they're off the street, and you know they're not going to be able to hurt anybody else. And I hope they go away for the rest of their life.
Now, it's my understanding that there's two other individuals that are connected to this carjacking, and they still remain at large.
Well, today he said that the two main suspects, of course, is Kibo and Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have identified that Jordan was the one holding the gun, and Kibo was the one driving the green Acura. And so they said there may have been other people in the vehicle, but they can't say that for sure. They're not real sure whether there was or not, but we know that these two are. Now, what is interesting is to see what part, Giovanni plays in this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because that was where she was headed, to his house. They found drugs and a weapon there. So, you know, I believe he was a part, you know, this is a part of a drug ring, no doubt about it. So was he involved in this murder? We don't know, you know. And also, what about her brother Lewis? Her brother Lewis is the one that said that the last person that talked to was Levani. Well, he knew about that, and he knew what was happening. Now, at first, they said that Lewis and the husband was cooperating with law enforcement, but guess what? Now they're not cooperating. The guy by the name of Lewis, they've caught him on a lot of lies now, and her husband, he's pretty well stopped cooperating at all, you know, and it's just probably getting an attorney and trying to get in his corner. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see, more arrests that comes down the road with this.
Right. Well, what we would like to tell our listening audience is if they have any further information regarding this case, is to call Crime Line 1-800-423-TIPS or 1-800-423-8477. Or you can also text at TIPS, which is 8477. Or you can even call the Seminole County Sheriff's Office at 407-665-6650. Thank you for that, Charlie.
Yes.
Do you have a crazy crook story for us today?
Well, you know, I was thinking when I was thinking about our show today in the program, I was thinking, you know, what would be my favorite crazy crook story? You know, we tell them every week, as you know, and we never run out of them because of all these crazy idiots out there. But I would like to do a little twist on it today.
All right.
I would like to tell about a situation I had when I was on the street as a patrol officer, and some of the crazy things that we run into. And one night I was out and I was doing patrol, and I came upon a disabled vehicle. And you know, a lot of times, a lot of officers sometimes they don't like to stop with disabled vehicles because then they get tied up with their time and, you know, trying to assist and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But I always tried every time, unless I was on an emergency call or had to go to an important call or something like that. If I saw a disabled vehicle, I always like to stop and assist. And but don't pat me on the back yet, though, because I really had a different motive involved. Because I can tell you how many people I arrested as a result of stopping at a disabled vehicle. You know, I'd find drugs, or I'd find an intoxicated driver or something like that. So it wasn't all being the good Samaritan that I would like to be. There's times, but I got to tell you about an instance. It was a disabled vehicle. I stopped at it, and there was a young lady in there, and she was trying to get the vehicle started. And you know, so me and my partner, and we said, well, you know, maybe we could assist. I mean, if it was your wife out there, you'd hope that a deputy would assist, wouldn't you, James?
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
my wife, and the same way, you know. So we wanted to help, and so my partner, he opened the hood up, you know, and looked at it and everything, and I went over, I turned the ignition on, and I noticed that I don't know a lot about a car, but I know enough to know that there's a little gauge there that says gas is full or gas is empty, right?
Right.
Well, this one was all the way over there, buried on empty, you know. And so and I'm telling you this, I'm not making this up. You can't make this stuff up, as we say. I looked at this young lady and I said, well, ma'am, I said, there's good news for you. There's really nothing wrong with your vehicle. You're just out of fuel. And so help me, James, when I said that, she looked up at me and she said, well, will it hurt it to drive it that way?
Oh, that's good stuff.
Oh man.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, no. She said, well, will it hurt it to drive it that way? Well, I said, I don't think it hurt it, but you're not going to drive it anywhere till you get some fuel.
That's great. That's a great story.
So that's my crazy story for the night.
That's
Anyhow.
that works. That works. Great. Thanks for sharing. That's fantastic. Okay, can you give us an update on what's going on with Chad Daybell? That's been our topic for the last 2 months now. So, and
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
actually since what, 2020?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Talking about this case.
I was telling my wife, I say, well, what, what are you talking about? I said, well, among other things, we're going to, give everybody an update on the Chad Daybell. She said, isn't that already over? And, you'd be surprised
Yeah,
at how many people think that that's already over. I mean, that was like 4 or 5 years ago
yeah,
when it took
yeah.
place. We were there on it, but no, it's not all over because Chad is now facing charges that might even bring the death penalty to the
Right,
table.
right.
And so we're kind of following a lot of the same stuff that you heard about when Lori Vallow, and this is called the Doomsday Couple.
Mm-hmm.
This is the couple, of course, that thought that they were called of God to lead God's people during the end of the times, and
Mm-hmm.
that they had lived in another lifetime, and that they were somehow destined to get rid of all the evil people in the world, and that people became evil when they had a dark spirit. And the sad part about this, as a result of that, there's her husband was killed, his wife died, and the 2 children were murdered. 2 little children, children, one 16 going on 17, little Joshua 7. So it's a really sad story. And so now Chad Daybell, for those who wouldn't know, who may be living under a rock, now Chad Daybell is facing trial. And there's been a lot of witnesses coming. A lot of them are the same witnesses that we saw during Lori Vallow's trial. So hasn't been a lot of new stuff. I will say this though, that as you and I talked the other day, the his attorney has been I think a lot more direct on cross examination than Lori's attorney was.
Mm-hmm.
And as you and I discussed, he really went after this idea that Tammy was killed, and he was bringing out the fact, that and unfortunately, uh, I like officers. I love police officers, but the officer that they had under examination about Tammy's death certificate and everything, I really don't believe that he had been prepared or prepped really to face that strong of a cross examination.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out and he brought about the fact, that he said, "Have you read the death certificate?" He said, "Well, I glanced at it." He said, you wanted to exhume this lady's body and you didn't even read the death certificate." And if you read the death certificate, you'd see that the coroner had said that this lady died because of a cardiac arrest and also some breathing problems. And that it's very apparent that she died of natural causes. Well, what this defense attorney did not reveal was the fact that the coroner was not a real coroner. I mean, she was elected there, but she wasn't even, she was more of a physician's assistant because it was a small area, and she didn't quite have the expertise as a lot of coroners that deal with death all the time. The other thing is that people don't understand, even when you're murdered, you got to stop living some way.
Right.
So, if you're killed, your heart's going to stop, right? So
Right.
you're going to have cardiac arrest, and you're going to stop breathing, So, I thought the defense attorney did a good job in trying to say to the jury that this was natural causes, when in fact, I believe there's much more to it, and I believe the jury will find much more to it. But I thought that in all the stuff that I have followed and reviewed in this trial, I would say that Chad's attorney probably did the best job of cross-examining one of the police officers than anybody I've seen in the case so far. Wouldn't you say?
I agree with you completely there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And of course, I think this week it was Lori's stepson came to it, and this was really sad. I remember whenever the children were missing, and he actually came and addressed her and addressed the news and literally begged her to let people know where her children was. And of course, she didn't, because she was already out in this, I call it Lululand, and thinking that she was had every right in the world to see those children murdered, which she didn't. So it's been really interesting. It's still interesting. Um, and yet, the defense has yet to put on their whole case, and I'm excited to see, or I guess I'm interested to see what kind of a defense the defense will really put on. Right now, it's just been basically cross-examination of the prosecution.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Mr. Pryor takes things to another level, perhaps. Maybe even some surprises and disclosures on some information
Yeah.
during the
But,
process.
I think the real problem that he's going to have, if he gets anywhere at all with this jury, now I don't think he will, but the real problem he's going to have is that there is this definite, what I think we were doing a series on it, we were calling it the smoking shovel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is the fact that he's going to try to say that that this was all Alex Cox doing, and that Alex always came to the rescue of his sister Lori,
Right.
and that Chad didn't know anything about it, and all that sort of thing, but it was all Alex Cox. But yet we know that when Alex Cox was out there, when he was burying those children that he murdered, we know that Chad called his wife that day and said that he was out there in that area, and that he had seen a groundhog, and he had shot this groundhog, and he buried this groundhog, which, that was basically to tell his wife that if she got out there and saw that the dirt was disturbed, that it was because that he had buried a groundhog. And then at the same time, he also said that he was burning brush and this sort of thing, which now we know it was actually Alex Cox burning the body, of not only JJ but his sister as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
when he said that, he certainly, and and they even have that on tape. They have a recording of it, the voicemail that he left, and that really puts him. He knew what was going on. He knew what was happening out on
Yeah.
that property.
It implicates him. Yeah.
And then when authorities were there, you could hear him talking to Lori while she was in jail, and said they're out there and they're looking on the property, and you could just hear it in his voice that he knew what the officers were going to find. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that the his attorney's going to try to distance him from it, but I just don't think he's going to be successful, because I think he's guilty.
Right. Yep. I mean, he's just the fact that said he was out there, or give the idea that he was out there, implicates that he knew something was going on.
Oh, he knew. Yeah, he knew what was going on all along, and I mean, you and I, and most of the people that are listening to this, we all are shaking our head and think, how could anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Be so low as to allow something like this to happen to precious children? And it is, it's tasteful, it's disgraceful.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, he deserves the death penalty.
What's your opinion of the judge thus far? You think that he's holding things fair?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's doing a good job. And I think he is. I think he's moving it along as good as possible.
Mm-hmm.
As these judges all have to be aware of, what the defense is going to go for is any mistake at all that they can get, so that they can try to and appeal this. And I'm sure that some of the things that Pryor is being denied, that he's even though he's being denied, he's coming back and he's asking for it again, because he wants to put it on record,
Mm-hmm.
because he hopes to be able to then turn around and appeal the case. But that's part, of course, in all these cases. They always try to find something that they could turn it over. So I think Pryor knows that he doesn't have very much of a chance at all to turn this jury, and he's hoping now that he can just trip up the judge and others, that they'll make a mistake so that they can appeal in the future.
I agree with you there. I think that's something that Pryor is going to be looking into, and probably has already, because I noticed he's been taking quite a bit of notes of late.
Oh yeah.
I think he's trying to find grounds for getting either nothing else, getting a retrial if it's of a hung jury, or possibly an appeal.
Sure, no doubt about it.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. If you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.